everyone, and welcome back to another edition of E2E or Engineer to Engineer. Today, we're talking with Yusef Skinner. He's a technical PM on the Azure Accelerated Connections team. So stay tuned. Hey, Yusef, how you doing?
Hey Pierre, thanks for having me. Doing well. How
Hey,
about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. What are you working on these days?
All
I
right.
hear something cool.
Yes, something very cool. Definitely positioning Azure to be a leader within network performance, and that feature specifically is called Accelerated Connections. So, been able to join this team, and it's really been taking off.
Cool. So when we say accelerated connection, is that like part of express route? Like where
Mhm.
does that fit in the networking of Azure?
Yeah, sure. So, Accelerated Connections is actually powered by a dedicated hardware unit that we've been adding across all of our regions within Azure. And this hardware unit is actually a set of data processing units that pretty much opens up the highway for network connection performance. So,
Okay.
we're literally recreating the SDN network stack on these dedicated appliances that supercharge or allow you to supercharge your NVAs and VMs.
Okay. So it's not something that a customer would install in their data center to accelerate the connection to our data center.
Yep. This is specifically in the cloud, and it's really awesome because you're able to turn this on at the network interface level, right? So if you can connect a network interface to any of your NVAs, your network virtual appliances, your firewalls, your routers, SD-WAN, those sort of things can enable accelerated connections, and then be able to realize that connection performance boost. I actually have a really nice topology of like a kind of like a before and after
Okay.
of what Azure was like before, right? And then where the hardware stack is actually going to be sitting in between, your source and destination. If we could show it too.
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem. Let me see here. All right, can you see my screen, Pierre?
I can.
Awesome. So this is a super simplified version of kind of what Azure looks like without accelerated connections in the path, or our what's called SDN appliance, not in the path, in your network path. And as you can see, a lot of those SDN policies are actually evaluated and computed on the host itself. This ends up being a little bit of a performance bottleneck because you not only have a much more limited CPU utilization of that host, but also the flow tables are limited by the memory on the host itself. You have that CPU utilization that's going to be a little bit of a bottleneck, as well as your memory, and that's related to the size of your flow tables. And with being able to introduce being able to introduce the SDN appliance and these dedicated data processing units, we are able to expand the amount of connections per second that is achievable for your NVAs and VMs within Azure, as well as being able to have a larger number of what's called active sessions, or total active connections at once, right? So that pretty much, like in layman's terms, means more connections equals being able to have more applications on the back end, more connections to your customers or your employees traversing your network path, right? And in the past, that was a huge bottleneck for a ton of our customers. For example, within the healthcare industry, there were a set of applications. One of our customers within the healthcare industry, they were reaching these bottlenecks where they had to continually horizontally expand their NVAs, which led to a higher cost, not only for being charged by Azure from standing up all of these NVAs and appliances, but also when it comes to, like, for example, like the licensing aspect, and then furthermore adding to the complexity of all the different ones you have to configure and just manage overall. SDN appliance kind of, well, not kind of, it does improve your connection per second, but also improves your total active connections. Both of those things together adds another level of stability that was not achieved prior to this.
Okay. So instead of scaling out horizontally,
Mhm.
having more and more like NVA virtual appliances, whatever it may be, the pipes coming through those is much larger. Therefore, we need a lot less of them.
Exactly, exactly.
Perfect.
Yep, being able to expand and really open up the floodgates and open up those highways for, we want to get out the way, right? We want to be able to say, you deploy whatever type of machine, and that machine should be able to communicate, have as many connections as possible and as much data as possible that we can offer, as well as being able to build as many connections as possible as fast, right?
Okay. And I assume this really helps in terms of throughput, in terms of latency, in terms of amount of concurrent sessions that your enterprise can have across the same infrastructure.
And that's actually a good point, and a really good talking point is understanding that because we are introducing what's called another bump in the wire, it does implicitly raise the latency, because it does have to stop and traverse through another a physical computer, right? Another
Yeah.
physical data processing unit. But overall, it becomes a much more negligible thing because of the stability and the quickness of being able to build these connections and have a larger number of connections that equals less drops, right? So we're not going to be, to kind of wrap that all up, is that we're not boosting the throughput, we're making the throughput more stable. And although we do have a negligible, when it comes to the application level, right, for a lot of the different applications that we work with our customers, it does become negligible. So that stability is definitely something that they are able to enable and acquire with accelerated connections.
Is there anything you could show us?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, awesome. I would love to. Let me go ahead and switch screens here. I would love to be able to show you exactly where you can find those properties and where you'll be able to edit it directly from the portal. Accelerated connections, you are able to turn on this feature definitely through all of our other supported deployment methods within Azure. So that CLI, PowerShell, Terraform, all of those other methods that allow you to scale up and scale down and configure all of your different resources in a more scripted way, all are supported. But let's hop over to Portal and take a look at to where you could be able to find those properties and then be able to edit them.
Okay.
So we're on a virtual machine. This
Mhm.
is one that I was using for some testing prior before, but you want to navigate to the network settings. And a lot of times when you can say, for example, firewalls, you would have, your management NIC, and then you have like your set, like one or several ingress NICs or one or several egress NICs. You wouldn't necessarily want to bump up the performance of, like, say, something like management NIC that you would just be used for controllers or just to SSH to your NVA or VM or whatever. You would just want to be able to bump up the ones that are used for traffic, right? Used for those higher workloads. So we're on the network settings page. We're going to navigate to one of the NICs that would be one of those high workload interfaces that would be, being able to be used there, and then go to our interface here. And then we would be able to navigate to, for example, like your export template. Give this a second to load, and then you would be able to update this template um, with your accelerated connections properties. So let's go to edit and drop all the way down to your network interface block or your network interface object here. Scroll down to where you would be able to see auxiliary mode and auxiliary SKU. For our platform that is going to be supporting accelerated connections, this is where you go in and you would, for example, edit these properties or update these properties to accelerated connections, and then update your auxiliary SKU. Auxiliary SKU gives you the ability to choose the performance that should fit best your network needs, right? So we are
Yeah.
offering currently four auxiliary SKUs: A1, A2, A4 and a super powered one, which is called A8 for these large workloads. And this is really important because we do charge our customers for this, but having this tiered approach allows for the customer to choose what puzzle piece best fits their needs, right?
Okay.
Um,
Well, A one, two, four, and eight, because we really like things that make sense.
yeah, so it's very funny that you mentioned it. It was a naming convention that we chose because we were selecting A standing for accelerated, and then at each level you would be able to have the ability on that NIC itself have either 1 million simultaneous connections, 2 million simultaneous connections, 4 million simultaneous connections, and then 8 million. And then that's where you were able to scale up also your ability to have connections per second, or CPS, right? And then you
Okay.
have the associated cost per hour. Cost per
So it
hour.
actually makes sense.
Yes, yes. We try our best to.
So let me ask you a question though. So if somebody's got an existing workload and they've got their clusters set, their appliances set, firewall, what have you, gateway, and they want to take advantage of that, is there an upgrade path for an existing environment, or can they just turn it on into their existing environment, or do they have to basically redeploy that resource?
Great question. So, for your standalone instances, there is a path or a workflow for you to be able to enable those brownfield or those legacy instances. It does require a stop then start though. So, within that process, if this is a older or one of your legacy standalone VMs, you would update the properties, your auxiliary mode, then your
Yep.
auxiliary SKU. Followed by that, you would then turn off the machine and then turn on the machine, and you would be able to receive that performance boost on that NIC that you would update. For scale sets, currently for scale sets, it does require a new deployment. So this is not going to be something that would be the process for in the near future. We're going to be able to have that process in parity with your standalones, right? But
Okay.
currently for your scale sets, you do have to deploy a new one.
Okay, so if we want to take advantage of that, we do have to plan for like an outage window or like a maintenance window or something like that.
Indeed, indeed. And we have been able to work very closely with several of our customers to not only help them plan those changes, plan tests, but also make sure that you have all of those things kind of situated and do it in an iterative manner usually, right? Because you're going to be getting this performance boost, and it's normally for a large amount of traffic, right? So being able to take that iterative approach, maybe even start with like your lower load regions, and then be able to expand out and plan for that outage, even though it would be fairly short. Plan for that outage. That would be the most ideal way to handle that. We also recommend being able to leverage, a more of a active setup. So being able to leverage like your load balancer backend pools and have one of your NVAs be able to take on that traffic while you're working on one that's being enabled or turned off and things of
Yeah.
that nature. But
Okay.
yes, all of
And
that to keep in mind.
last questions for me.
Okay.
So I've got this. I needed accelerated networking. I deployed it in my environment. I picked A2 for sake of argument, thinking, okay, based on monitoring and sample analysis from ongoing traffic patterns,
Mhm,
I think I need A2. If I need to bump it up to A4,
mhm.
do I have to go through that outage again, or can I just adjust the SKU?
Yes. So updating your auxiliary SKU does also mean you would have that outage as well.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. Well, it's, from what I understand, and really great way of increasing the capacity of your network without adding a huge amount of complexity to your environments. Am I correct?
Yes, exactly, exactly. Very simple, those two different properties, and having that ability to scale based on the traffic needs is all you pretty much need.
Well, Yusuf, this is fantastic. And for those of you watching this video right now, description in the bottom will have the links to the actual documentation and any information that you can glean for that. So, Yusuf, thank you so much for spending the time with me and letting me know about this wonderful new feature. And for you at
Thank you.
home, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments if you have any questions. We'll make sure that you get them answered.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pierre.
Thanks.